Here I have the latest Traska Seafarer Gen 3 to be exact. Now, earlier this year, I reviewed the Traska Freediver and I was pretty impressed with it. And now I have the dual crown or the super compressor style in for review. All of the latest Gen Traska watches will be available for purchase on their site on Sunday, November 3rd at 11 a.m. And so here we are a few days before with a look at this stone gray dial Seafarer. Now, much like the Freediver and other models, this has been reworked, refined, and tuned up a little, but you're probably not going to see a massive change from Gen 2 to 3 like there was from Gen 1 to 2. But every year or so, Traska likes to do small improvements to each model, and that's what we have here. It's still 38.5 millimeters. It has the scratch resistant hard coating, the updated on the fly adjustment clasp, a Miyota 9039 movement, and it's available in 4 colors. The current pricing is $665, so let's take a look and see if the improvements make this one the best yet. About the dial color of the Traska Seafarer because there is a big difference from what you see on the website to what you're seeing here. The reality is the website shows it as a darker charcoal gray, and in person it's more of just gray. It's a regular gray. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I still think it looks pretty good. I like gray dial watches. I have a fondness for gray dial watches. I like that they're becoming more prevalent with many brands. But I do think that you should know that if you are looking for a charcoal gray dial, this one is not it. It looks more like what you're seeing on video right now. Now let's go ahead and stick with the dial here for a bit. The dial is also, it's very monochromatic. The dial is gray, the inner bezel is gray. There's no pop of color anywhere on the dial. The lume plots are pretty much white. So there's no pop. It's a little plain, if you will. Now, that's not a bad thing if that's what you're looking for. The dial is matte. The lume plots are printed, so there's no metal surrounds to catch the light. It's just a very subdued dial. Now for me, on this gray dial, I would have liked a darker internal bezel, either a dark gray or even black, to give the dial some contrast. Before I get too far into discussing the look and changes of this Gen 3 Traska Seafarer, let's go ahead and get all the specs and price on screen. Now, this is still a 38.5 millimeter stainless steel case as before, and it's priced currently at $665. It's still running Miyota 9039 movement, which means it's a thin movement and there's no date, and it's currently available in 4 colors: black, this stone gray, blue, and a sun-bleached orange. And that orange one is the only one to have a contrasting inner bezel color. Now, other changes from Gen 2 to Gen 3 are those indices. Now, they keep going back and forth on what type of indices have been on the Seafarer. The first version had printed, second gen opted for applied, and now we're back to printed. But these have pretty thick lume plots on them. It's not quite Lumi cast style, but they are raised up off of the dial. Now, a few other changes. I'm not sure if I could really show off the differences between the older models, but there is a wider inner bezel with a slightly different font, a brushed outer bezel area instead of polished, and there is now a polished chamfer around the sides of the bezel. The other big change is that the bezel crown is now screw down. The first 2 gens were obviously not, so now it locks into place. It also has the latest bracelet and end links and the quick adjust clasp, and the entire watch is hard coated. And of course, let's talk about that hard coating here for a second. I've talked about these coatings on various brands for a while. Many are using them these days. Even Hanhart has recently released a watch with a hard coating. Hard coatings are going to protect the watch for a while from small marks and scratches, but a big hit can still leave a mark on that steel, or the hard coating can press into the softer steel below. Either way, you could still scratch and mar this up. Don't think that you can throw it into the street and it's not going to have a mark on it. But there is one thing that I didn't realize about these hard coatings, and I noticed it here, and somehow I missed it when I reviewed the Freediver model, and that's that they're a lot more resistant to fingerprints and smudges than I thought they were, especially with these high polished surfaces on the sides and the edges of this Seafarer bracelet. Normally, I'm having to wipe these watches down constantly when doing photos and video, and it seems like these just don't show the normal smudges and fingerprints like a standard high polished steel case would, and for me, that's a bonus. Now, one thing I do want to talk about as well, all of these models, all of the new models of Traska, or I shouldn't say new models, they're all existing models, but they've all gotten their upgrades over the years. This year, they've all been upgraded again. As a matter of fact, the free diver I reviewed back in February, it's been changed again already. You can check that out on their website. But one thing that's the same with all of the models is they basically share the same case and bracelet. Now the sizes might be different, like the Freediver's 40 millimeters and this Seafarer is 38.5. And they're all going to have different sizes. And of course, the dials are going to be different. But your bracelet and the case finishing and everything and the design, it's all the same. So what I'm getting at with this is if you have one model from them and you plan to get another, it's pretty much going to look the same as far as the case and bracelet, with the difference obviously being either the size or the dial. Now, that's not uncommon either. One micro brand I can point to that does this is Monta as an example. Now, remember, I'm not talking about different variations of the same model, but the same case and bracelet being used across all models. Now, that said, I do like the current look they have done. I'd prefer brush sides with the just high polished chamfer, but you know what? With the high polished area not showing the smudges and fingerprints and being pretty scratch resistant, all things considered, a lot of the issues I have with the high polished cases are not present here. Like I said, now both crowns screw down. And the one thing that I could say is that even though with the smaller 38.5 millimeter case, the crowns are large enough at 6.3 millimeters for me to easily grip and use, and both are pretty smooth. But like a lot of screw down crown bezels, it takes a little bit of finesse to screw it back down and have that marker stay where you put it. But in general, this example is pretty good. On my 7.5 inch or 19.05 centimeter wrist, it's as comfortable as the Freediver was. The case back is flat, it's unadorned, and those end links and the fully articulated bracelet links flows right around the wrist. And if after sizing it's a little too loose or tight, you have the on-the-fly extension clasp that you can adjust. Now, when this arrived, it doesn't have the links in it for some reason. The extra links are in the box, but either way, I had to put one link in for a perfect fit, so that leaves two extra links. So basically, you're looking at about an 8-inch wrist that it can fit with all the links that they offer. And I do want to mention again about watch sizes because I was just reading some recent comments on the Vulcan Skin Diver review, and it's almost like people are taking it as a slight when I say I would prefer a watch to be larger. Let me make this clear. I think this Seafarer watch looks okay on my wrist, but my preference is for 40 millimeters or larger, just like you may want a watch to be smaller. You may see a 42 millimeter watch and go, man, I wish it was smaller. Whether you have a smaller wrist or you just prefer a smaller watch, that's fine. This would probably be a good choice, I assume. But we all have our personal preferences, and by no means am I saying that all watches should be bigger. I get that some have smaller wrists or that you just like smaller watches, and that's okay. Lastly, we have the loom, and I did read a few comments asking if the loom had been improved. I never had the first two generations, but I could say the loom on the hands and those raised loom plots is very good, and it glows for quite a while. Unfortunately, the bezel area is lacking. Look, there's a tiny little area there to apply loom. It's very thin, so it really doesn't glow that well. I like that Traska keeps refining their watches each year. The Freediver is in its sixth generation, and now the Seafarer is in its third, and they keep changing and improving their watches for the better. And this Seafarer does have a lot to like. It's a very well made and finished watch, and there's a lot of attention to small details. Now, personally, I'd like to see a contrasting color on the bezel, especially with this gray one. And while I love a matte dial, I almost yearn for a sunburst dial here, but these things are purely subjective in my opinion, and you may love how it currently looks. It's a well-made watch for under $700, but I think for the next generation of watches that Traska does, I want to see some bigger changes to all the models. I'm aware that the same bracelet and clasp that could fit every model can keep overall costs down. Same can be said about the case design and finishing. But I'd like to see some different case styles and some different bracelets, at least for one or two of the models in the future. What are your thoughts? Do you like that the collection of models is pretty cohesive, or would you like to see more variation? What do you think of the latest gen Seafarer? Let me know down in the comments below. There's also going to be a written review available, and of course, if you want to see more, you could head over to the Traska website. Remember, these are available for purchase 11 a.m. this Sunday. Now, while you're here, please do me a favor, go ahead and make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It greatly helps out the channel. This is Don Evans from Watch Report. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.